Welcome to this episode of the Power Platform Show. Today I have Laura Taylor. She's the principal at Tacoma Public School, who has really, over the last 2 to 3 years, used the Power Platform to build out many solutions that allow her work environment to run more smoothly. So I'll let you listen to her story now. Full show notes will be at nz365guy.com/214. Laura, and welcome to the Power Platform Show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you on the show, and since we last talked, I see that you're now no longer the assistant principal, but the principal. Is that right?
That's correct. I have moved up. I was able to stay at the same school, but I'm the principal now.
Wow, exciting. So tell us a bit about yourself. What part of the world do you live in, and what do you do?
Well, I live in Tacoma, Washington, so that's in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, up in the corner. And I'm I was going to say assistant principal. I'm the principal at an elementary school, so we have preschool through 5th grade students, about 500 students in our building in the Tacoma School District.
Wow. So Tacoma, I think of every time I land in Seattle, it's always at Tacoma Airport, right? So is it in that vicinity or that area?
Yeah, right. So our airport is actually the SeaTac Airport. So it's Seattle-Tacoma Airport. So we're about, I'd say, a little under 30 minutes south of the airport.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so I can picture the kind of area in my mind where you are, which is, of course, lots of lovely forests and trees. And in an amazing climate. That's why everyone wants to live there, right?
Right. My brother actually lives in Charleston, South Carolina. He brought my nephews who came to visit, and they've never, come. And they said, "Oh, there's so many trees here." Yeah. Very beautiful part of the world. What's the best place? If you have friends coming for the first time, where do you recommend they go see, and what do you recommend they do when they're in Seattle and Washington area? Well, if they're going to be in the Tacoma area, I definitely recommend going to Point Defiance Park. So huge park, in the city near the water. There's a zoo there, and it's just beautiful. So, like I said, my nephews came to visit, and that's definitely where they went because, if they saw trees just landing, you're going to get all of that beautiful nature, the zoo, everything. It's beautiful.
And what do you recommend to eat food-wise?
You have to eat something on the water, some type of fresh seafood because it's also local, so fresh. So I would say almost anything, on the water. I love Duke's Chowder House. Crab cakes are amazing.
Oh, sound amazing. Sounds amazing. And making me hungry. It's just coming on lunchtime here in New Zealand. So, wow. So tell us about you're, well known in the Power Platform space, PowerApps, that type of thing, as somebody that really early on got involved in PowerApps. What was your journey to kind of getting involved with it?
My journey, I laugh every single time I'm presented with that question. And that's because I stumbled on this journey purely by accident. And then, of course, never looked back. But for me, our district has an Office 365 subscription. And so when you log in, that landing page, all of the apps that we have available to us are there. So this was summertime, maybe July a few years ago. And I was clicking around just on the things that I hadn't clicked on before. And honestly, Flow, it was Flow then, Power Automate was one that I hadn't clicked on before. And so I just clicked on it, started digging, and I thought, oh my gosh, this automates things. Where has this been all my life? Because as an assistant principal, it's busy. It just is. That's the nature of the job. And I'm going, I can have things automated. I need to dig in here. And so I started to try to get some of our reading data just automatically from one place to another. And as I went on in this journey, I learned, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty with Flow in our district. And so my concern kept getting escalated at the district level and then escalated even further to the point where they're like, we're going to send this issue to Microsoft. And so then I ended up speaking with Harold Kless, who works in that department. I believe he's still there. And I'm on the phone with him and he's telling me these, what's wrong with Flow. And he's saying, tell me what you're trying to do with it. And I said, well, we have this reading data and all of these folders that teachers have to carry around, and the data and the information isn't very accessible. And so Flow's really going to help with that. And he says to me, well, with what you're trying to do with Flow, I really think that you'll like PowerApps. And I laughed at him. I said, wait, you think that I can build an app? I'm a school principal. That is not my jam. Just like fix Flow for me and let's move on. And he said, oh, I don't know. I think you might want to try it. So I get Flow fixed. And then one of the templates for Flow says, you need to have a SharePoint library. And SharePoint is something I'd never used either. But I thought, okay, I'll jump into that. I'll play around. And there's this little button on SharePoint that says, create a Power App or create an app. And I go, I wonder if this is what he was talking about. So I click it and PowerApps opens. And I'm like, oh my goodness, if I could find his email or his phone number now just to let him know, because that was really how I kind of stumbled on it, was it being right there in SharePoint for me. And honestly, ever since pushing that button in that moment, I've been like, oh, this can be an app. This can be an app. So that's how I found myself there.
So you started taking items out of your day-to-day job, as in processes or things that you did, and you just started either automating them or building apps around them.
Right. I was just playing with it and saying, okay, how does this work? Oh, and I noticed there's just different connectors. Oh, you can connect this thing to this thing. I didn't even know these two products could talk to one another. And that just got my brain going of, okay, what is the biggest thing that we do that is really like the biggest time suck, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And one of it was these, our reading assessments that we assess every student one-on-one, record that on paper, enter it into a database. But really, the only people that can see and use that data is the teacher right in front of that student. And we have so many people who work with kids. And I thought, if I could get one process automated, it would be this process.
So what happened?
So I built an app. And so we had all of our teachers, what we did was we gave teachers a paid amount of time where they could come in and load their student names, because, I didn't know anything about connecting our apps to, CDS or anything like that. So we just had every student name in a SharePoint list and the different categories where we needed student data, their reading accuracy, fluency, what level they scored, what level is above that, all of that they recorded. And it's not anything different than was on the sheet that they were recording it on already. And that was important for me, because I never want teachers to feel like I'm giving them an extra step, an extra thing to do. And the minute you give teachers an extra thing to do, that is a surefire way to not have it adopted.
Yeah.
And so that was how we said, this is really just electronic version of this. But what was so amazing about that was once that student data was in there, we were then able to visualize it on Power BI. That's the first time in the district that reading data has been visualized in that particular way. Before it was, okay, a student scored at a level 28, you put in the number 28. But the reading assessment itself gives so much more information about students, but there was no way to enter that data or visualize that data. So we were the first ones that did that, which was, it was great, because it didn't matter, whose class that student was in. Anyone had access to the data and can sit down, and read with that student.
Wow, so good. And so I assume that over time that you could also start watching trends or patterns appearing in that data as students were reassessed.
Exactly. The first thing that we noticed when I say we, I'm discussing my admin team. So I was the assistant principal at the time and the principal. The very first thing that we noticed when we sat down and read the data was all of our students scored lower in the category of sustained reading. So, students being able to just sit and enjoy a book for a period of time. So that was an initiative right there at the building level where we said, you know what, we need to give kids more time with books, just sitting and reading and teaching them those behaviors of sitting and reading, because that's important, right? But we would never have been able to see that systematically. Even though the assessment gave us that data, we would have to go through almost 500, stacks of paper and do tally marks to identify that. So we were able to make quick change and decisions as a building through that, but also layered into just the data piece of the app was I put in this part where teachers can read and confer with students or do an assessment with students and leave their notes right in the app. And, we have classroom teachers in each class, but we also have different people, special education, interventionists, all of that coming in and working with the same student. So then what they were able to do with the app is sit down next to the student, pull up the app, and say, oh, I see your teacher read this book with you and you guys discussed this, and pick up where they left off. And I had one of my interventionists say that was vital to their partnership because they didn't always have time to meet with one another and say, oh, this is what I'm doing with this child and this is what I've already done. So she said I would sit next to a student, I would see the teacher's notes, and I would know exactly what to talk to him about without having to interrupt the teacher. So that's just the ability to collaborate around student needs has been huge just from that piece.
Yeah. Some really good outcomes there. So tell me, in Microsoft suite of products, because sometimes I wonder if a lot of what you get in Office 365 was really built for schools, and that there's many applications from Microsoft Teams. Of course, you've talked about Power BI and reporting and the Power Platform. 2-3 years on now, what are you using from the Microsoft suite perspective, and how has it kind of changed the way you're educating?
Oh man, I would have to open it up, and then you could open it up and print what's there, and that's what we're using.
So you're using the whole suite?
I'm using, I would say, close to the whole suite, and it's just you have to be able to see things in a different way, in a different lens, right? For instance, I'm using Planner, which is, kind of a product management or a project management thing. And we used it to do virtual class placements because for class placement, each student has a card with their information on it. And they say boy or girl, special education, this need, that need. Are the classes balanced in terms of behavior and needs and numbers? And so we just made each student a card. And then we could use the chart to say, well, is the class balanced? If this tag says, high behaviors, this teacher has 4 students with high behaviors. And I mean, my teachers after that said, I was hesitant about doing virtual class placements because, we're socially distancing. So we were all at home. We had to figure out how to do this. And they said, this is the best class placement meeting I've ever gone to. It went so fast. So you just have to look at things in a different way. We use Stream constantly, especially now with our videos. We use Bookings. I think we're probably the only school in district.
Is that right?
Who uses Bookings. But I would say pretty much the whole thing, because that's what I do is I sit and I look at, I'll say, oh, I haven't used this product yet. Well, how could I use it for education?
So how do you use Bookings? What are you using it for?
Well, first, another teacher of mine actually had found it. And she said, well, I think we might be able to use this for parent-teacher conferences.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I said, okay, well, let's dig into it and try. And we were actually going to roll it out in the spring. But then obviously, with COVID, we weren't able to do that. And so I started out with the school closure of teachers being able to book myself and my principal, because with school closure and people not being in there, you can imagine how many times in a day people pop past my office and go, hey, can I ask you a question really quick? And so we were missing that because we were all at home. So it'd be a text here or email here or a Teams message. And I was just missing so many things and so many people. So I said, okay, I'm going to set it up to where you can book me or the principal, and that'll be our designated time just with you, uninterrupted. So that was how it started. But then as I got teachers who were becoming more proficient in different things like Sway and recording PowerPoint lessons and using Stream, so they became content experts where I said, okay, now I can pull some of this off of myself and say, now you can book a meeting with Mr. Schreiner on how to use PowerPoint Recorder. And they were doing it. There were these meetings happening without me, and they were teaching one another while using Bookings.
So good. So good. So how does the Power Platform feature in what you're doing now?
With Bookings or?
No, just in general, and as you've learned more around, stepping from Flow, PowerApps, etc., what other workloads have you moved over, or tasks or activities have you moved over to the Power Platform?
Okay, so our first app after the reading app was our Checkin Checkout app. And so that app was based on, students who we call, tier 2 students, or students who might just need a little bit of extra support in the classroom, another person to check in and check out with. They're seeking that type of connection with a person. And so they have someone that in the mornings, they check in with them. Hey, here's my goal for today. I really want to get better at this. I want to work on this. And they set that goal with their check-in, check-out person. And then they have a little card that they carry with them throughout the day. And the teacher stops and talks with them, says, okay, in math, you did really great. You did this, you scored this much toward your goal. And that's after every subject. And then at the end of the day, they check out with each person, or with the same person that they checked in with. So really, that's just those students who are seeking connection, that's providing them that connection all day. And then, typically their goal is to get, 80% of the points available to them. And so this card then was collected by the checkout person, and they wrote it on a sheet. And then once a month, everyone who did check-in, check-out would give all of their sheets to our family liaison, who then hand input every single score into an Excel document. And we viewed that data once a month at a meeting, was how it was. The trouble with that is you couldn't watch any student trends if you are only viewing the data once in a meeting. And so typically I would see those students in the office for behavior rather than being able to be proactive and say, oh, looks like so-and-so is going through something. Let's try to intervene here. So what the app did was, same type of setup where we had, students in a SharePoint list, and the data spoke to a Power BI dashboard, and teachers just went around with their phone, check in, set the goal. And the students still had the paper document because it provided them, kind of a visual reminder.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And it was easier for teachers to score. But they would, when they checked out, then their checkout person would put the score in, and automatically I was able to look at that data, say, okay, how did my kids do today who are on check-in, check-out? They didn't get their scores in, or it wasn't high enough. And that, our family liaison, I can tell you, she's a family liaison. Her title is not data input person.
Exactly.
And so she has other things that she needed to do. And this completely obliterated that task for her, because she never had to put data in an Excel sheet anymore. And I could see that data right at the end of the day and know which grade level struggled, which student struggled, which ones did well, which ones are ready to be off of this program. So that was the next one that was really impactful for our building. And so since then, we've created our bus check-in app, which I always say is my favorite app, because I didn't create it. The community created it for me. And then working on one other app in terms of requesting support for behavior in the classroom, because teachers always call, the office if there's something going on, and then the office has to walkie me or walkie whoever's available, and then they call that teacher back. I mean, you can imagine if you're calling the office for support, you've got this whole loop. And so I created an app where teachers, either from Teams or from their phone, can request a certain type of support, and that'll send an alert to me or the counselor or the special education teacher, depending on who works with that student best. It'll send an alert to them through Flow to say, hey, this teacher's requesting support for this student, and the type of request the type of support they're requesting. Because sometimes teachers want you to come in and watch the class while they have a discussion with another student. That keeps that relationship right. But I would go into the classroom. I'd have to interrupt the flow of teaching and say, okay, what do you need me here for? What would you like me to do? But now they can go to Teams or go to the app and say, I'm requesting, tier 2 support. I'd like to speak to the student. I'd like you to take over. So when I arrive in that classroom, I already know that information.
Yeah. You're in the mindset. You're prepped. You know what you're going to do.
Exactly. And it's much less, if a student has interrupted the class to where the teacher needs to request support, I don't need to be another interruption in providing the support,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wow, that's so good. So have you come across any challenges with the Power Platform and building apps? And you mentioned community built an app for you, and I'm interested to know more about that. But is there any challenges that you've come across, and then how have you addressed them? How have you overcome them with working with the technology?
I would say probably my biggest challenge in using PowerApps is, here's one thing I know about PowerApps, is that anything that I want to do, I can do it. And so that's almost, a blessing and a curse, right? Because I don't necessarily speak the lingo, but I'm like, I know that this is possible. I know that this is a thing. But what's been really awesome is having that community of people. You've got your power addicts and all those people out there who I literally am on a WhatsApp group, or I put it out on Twitter and I say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Can someone help me? And then, 5 to 10 minutes, I've got 6 people saying, oh, you just need to do this. You just need to do this. And then it's done. I don't have to necessarily call support and wait and explain what I'm trying to do. One example, I'll give you an example quickly, was during the school closure, we had lunch service at the middle schools, right? And I was doing some lunch service at the middle schools, and I was talking to a high school principal. And there was a problem he was trying to solve in terms of students being marked present for work that they're completing versus, just engaging with the teacher during this closure. And just the way that he was framing it, I was saying, I just really feel like this is an app, but I don't know. So I just went to my group and I said, hey, you guys, this is just what I'm thinking. These thoughts are not fully formed. Is anybody available to jump on Teams with me and have a call? 10 minutes later, I'm on the phone, or I'm on a Teams call with Vivek, and he's telling me, hey, he's just shooting the breeze with me in terms of bouncing ideas off. And in the end of it, he says, well, it sounds like this. It sounds like this. And I go, that's something that I can do, so it's limitless, the abilities that I have, not just with Power Platform, but that community piece on top of it is everything.
So how did the community help you build that bus app? How did that come about?
So one day I was sitting in my office and I'm packing up and I'm getting ready to leave. It's about 5:00 at night. And this school bus pulls up at the front of the school and I go, please don't get off. Please don't get off. And a little kid gets off the bus and I'm like, oh, that means either this child has gotten on the wrong bus or someone wasn't at the bus stop, to go pick them up or whatever it is. And it's my dreaded 5:00 task, honestly, is to see a bus coming. And so I said, you know what, I've got to check these kids into the bus, because the biggest thing that usually happens is a student has gotten on the wrong bus. And that's 9 times out of 10 why a bus has come back. And so I said, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to print the bus list and check all the kids in. And that was great for the first week. And then you need to reprint your list and change who is on what bus because they move, or, well, this one only rides this bus on this day. And I'm going, okay, this for sure is an app. I have 0 time to make it. So that's what I literally did, was went on Twitter and I said, here's the problem. This is an app. I have 0 time to make it. Can anyone help? And again, the community rushed in. I want to say within 24 hours, there was a WhatsApp group created with 15, 20 people who had said, yes, for sure. I want in on this. Eric Save was one person that, kind of led the charge with that. And I felt bad at one point because I didn't have any time to help. I really didn't. So I'll be, going through the halls or in a meeting and getting these pings on WhatsApp of people literally creating this app for me while I'm doing my job. And they said, okay, hey, if you have time, which I laughed at because I'm thinking these people are asking for my time to show me something they made for me, if you have the time. So of course I have the time for you. So I sit and they show me, okay, here's what we created. Here's how it's going to work. Here's how you connect it. Does this look good? Yes, this looks amazing. And so I would say there was about a week's lag time in terms of me teaching the staff how to use it. And then I taught my office staff how to put kids in and, how to put the little alerts in. And we were up and running. And now, since we've launched the app, I have not stayed after school one time where a bus has come. And I work pretty late sometimes, but it's never again happened where a bus has come and a student has gotten on the wrong bus.
That's so cool. Yeah. Good shout out for Eric there. I know Eric well, and good to hear he's helped you there. That's so good. And I'm impressed the way the community has come together. And I just wonder how many other, whether it be schools or really any other type of organizations, businesses have those challenges, not-for-profits, et cetera, that need that type of help. They kind of know what their problem is. They can define it clearly, but just don't have the time or resource. And, often there's folks in the community, of course, that can help. So if they can get the message out there, there's a lot of people willing to give things a crack.
Yeah, there really is, because, the type of support that I receive from the community, that's something people, I don't know if I should say it, but that's something people pay for,
Yeah.
But the community, every single time I've said, hey, I have a need. I'm a principal in an elementary school. I can't pay a big consulting firm to come be my tech advisors,
But often, right, there's people in the community that they might not be able to give money to a cause, but they can give their time and expertise.
Right.
And when people put these opportunities out there for them, and and even for people earlier on in their careers, it's a great way to develop their skills. So fantastic. Tell me about adoption. How teachers would have a traditional way of working, might be very paper centric, depending on their backgrounds. How have you kind of facilitated adoption at your teacher level and maybe even at a student level to adopting these technologies that you've implemented?
Oh, adoption. I'm not even going to lie. I did a sneaky adoption the first time, Mark.
Okay. Tell me about it.
We started when Teams, first came out. We started with Teams, and my staff had already used Staff Notebook. And I said, okay, Teams is out. Let's give it a shot. Let's try it. So we had already adopted Teams full on as a staff in terms of where we do our collaborative work, where we store information, store files, all of that. And so with the reading app, I knew the minute I said, hey guys, I made a reading app, that I was going to lose about 10 people in the room. So I didn't. I went to each grade level channel in Teams and I stuck it right up there as a tab. And I said, hey, this is where you're going to store your reading data. And, oh, look, you can look up a student, you can confer with them, you can put their scores in. I just made it a part of Teams. I didn't say anything about it being an app. And then, after some time when more people were using it, I said, oh, hey, look, it's an app. So you don't have to bring your laptop every time you go. It's right here. And so that soft landing is actually what made adoption grow. Because if I had just come in and said, I've got a great app for you guys, people would have said, we've got something else. And I always try to avoid the something else. And now, so there are some teachers who just use it on Teams, on the computer. I do have a good amount who use either, a tablet or their phones. Our bus app is 100%, on phones. No one uses that on Teams because we're standing out at buses. So Teams has actually been pretty instrumental in my adoption process for apps.
Yeah, such a good idea. Have you had students get involved in building apps?
I haven't had students at my building get involved in apps, but I'm actually kitty corner to our feeder middle school. And that principal over there has started seeing the work that I've been doing with PowerApps, and he and I collaborate quite a bit. And since he's at the middle school level, he can get students on it, because we're still trying to baby step it here at the elementary school a little bit, but he's able to get students on it and he's learning about it a little bit more himself. And I've seen a couple of little apps where kids are kind of playing around a little bit, but nothing quite yet. But I do think that, in the future, in the fall, he's definitely going to lean toward, because I told him, I said, honestly, this is a class for credit. And I've got a couple of things that I know some of your students could make for my students. So we're kind of collaborating in that way.
I like it. What's been the impact from other, principals that you would interact with in seeing how you've used this technology? Is other schools coming to you and seeking you out and wanting to go, how can it work for them?
Yeah, I would say for sure pre-COVID, that was happening, in spots. Like I said, the principal, Kitty Corner, he and I would kind of collaborate. He's also very into the Microsoft products. He has his, Microsoft Innovative Educator Expert Certificate, all that. So we both collaborate in that way. But during COVID is where kind of the flood came in, because the light was sort of shined on to my staff on their own ability and relationship in relation to their peers. And then everyone else started to see, oh, look at what Manito's, doing over there. Take a look at their lessons, see how they're using this and see how they're using that. And so now we're really at a point where teachers are saying, oh man, I didn't realize, what we were doing was so innovative. It's like, yeah, you guys are really working hard. And so it's interesting because I sent an email to my staff today asking them about something. And I said, look, I just want you guys really to know that first, number one, you worked really hard. I know teachers everywhere worked really hard during the closure and trying to continue to connect with their students. And I applaud every single teacher for doing that. And number two, because of the hard work that they have done, they have shown the light on Manitou so well that I have teachers in other buildings, other districts who find me, LinkedIn, email, whatever that is, and say, hey, if you have any openings, I'd really love to be at Manitou. And I share that with them because that is their work that people are seeing. So, yeah.
That is so cool. How has it impacted you? And what I mean here is that, people hear about the Power Platform, PowerApps, Power Automate, Power BI, that type of thing. And often they are what we'd call non-technologists, so they're not got an IT background. And you've come into the space as an educator, and really, to some degree, you're really now a full-on technologist as well. How have you found the expansion of your network outside of the education system? In other words, the fact that you're engaged with Microsoft and people in the community. You mentioned Vivek, which is he's in marketing, which is quite different than the education system. How has it impacted you personally in your network, the people that you would now consider peers outside of the education system?
It's so funny because it took me, and it's still taking me, a long time to honestly consider those people as peers. Because I look at myself, when you're in education, whether you're a teacher or administrator, people kind of look at you and go, man, you're doing something I'd never be able to do. I'd never be able to be with kids all day. So you kind of get siloed and you kind of roll with your own, which is fine. And now, when you say peers, actually, that's the first time that I've heard that, because I don't necessarily see it that way. I say, man, these people know so many great things that I don't know yet. And then all my, other people I talk to say, but you're holding your own with them, aren't you?
Exactly.
I said, well, I'm trying. But in terms of the network, just knowing people all over, someone that I'm going to, bring up here in a little bit, I've met people all over the world in terms of connections. That would have never just happened had I stayed in my own little educational world and educational bubble. And then just the amount of outside the box thinking, right? Because I'm thinking outside of the box for education, but then if I reach out to Vivek, or I reach out to Eric, or I reach out to Geetha, then they've got different lenses on things, right? And so when I say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, and then they'll go, well, what if you could make it do this? And, it just makes things so much richer and deeper, when you have these connections that are not necessarily educational connections, but at the end of the day, it's making things better for kids. And people who don't directly work with kids are making things better for kids. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, so good. What's been your key takeaways from your journey with the Power Platform?
I feel like my major key takeaway, I've already said, which was I went from, once I realized that I could use the Power Platform, I realized I can do anything that I want to do. Anything that I can kind of dream up and maybe imagine, I actually can do that with something that's right in front of me. I don't have to necessarily consult out or hire out, but not just that I can do it, but that other people believe in my ability to do it. Other people support my ability to do it. And those have been my takeaways, because you feel a little bit less alone, in the world. And sometimes I would think of some just really outlandish for education ideas. And sometimes people can't grasp them. So it's like, oh, okay. Oh, there's Lauren over there being Lauren again, but with having this community of people around me, it's like, no, that's great. Keep going with that. And that is really what has pushed me forward.
I like it. If people were interested in getting started with the Power Platform in any type of industry, business, education sector, non-for-profit, how do they get started? If someone came up and let's say you're out at a function and they said, how do I get started? What can I do? What can I do? Go home tonight and actually start doing something here. What would your recommendation be?
My recommendation for someone who wants to get started would for sure be, first, figure out what's your use case? What problem are you trying to solve? When I moved into my principal position, I then, another assistant principal moved in, and she's someone that's really passionate about kids. We're going to be a great team together. And she said, one thing that I know I need to do in working with you is beef up my technology ability and my use. So I'm going to go home and I'm going to learn this program. And I said, the best thing that you can do is to try to solve a problem and find what's going to work best for that, because that's what's going to give you the drive to keep going. If you're just saying, I'm going to go learn PowerApps, well, you could watch YouTube videos all day. That doesn't make you any better. It's when you get down in there and you get down and dirty and you're like, okay, I'm trying to not have this stack of paper on my desk anymore. What can I do about it? Then that's where you'll find that drive to get in there and dig. So that's always my advice. What problem are you trying to solve?
I like it. Awesome. Okay. Are you ready for some quickfire questions to wrap up with?
Sure. Let's do it.
Here we go. When you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A teacher.
Did you really?
I did. I wanted to be a teacher since the second grade. My second grade teacher was amazing. Her name is Kathy Brady, and she's the person who made me want to be a teacher. And then for about 2 months in college, I wanted to be a pediatrician. And then I switched back.
What's the best hotel you've ever stayed in and why?
People who know me will say she's going to say Tulalip Resort and Casino. And it's so funny because I don't think I ever even go to the casino when I go there. It's my ultimate just relaxation, and there's lots of shopping there, and room service is amazing. So there you go.
Awesome. What's the most surprising self-realization you've had?
I would say that the things that I think are outlandish and kind of what people would say out there are things that some people just aren't quite ready for yet. So instead of I used to take that and feel really bad about myself, like, you're really dumb for thinking that. But once I was able to push through and do it anyway, and then people said, that's what you meant. That's amazing. So trust myself, I guess.
I love it. Would you rather have a personal cook or a personal cleaner?
I'd say a personal cleaner because I'll just use Uber Eats, but then my house will be clean.
I love it. What's something that you will never do again?
Something that I will never do again. The thing coming to mind is doubt myself. So there you go. So
Good, I'll
never doubt myself.
I love it. If you could only keep 3 things from your home, what would you pick and why?
3 things. Does it include people or just things?
Yeah, it can be people.
Okay, well, my kids, I have 2 of those. So, and my husband. So I guess that's 3, right?
That's 1.
That's it.
That's 1.
Okay. All right. So my family, my computer, it's got my life on it, and my dog.
Nice. No, that's very, very cool. It's been great talking to you. Do you have any recommendations of a future guest for the show?
I would say Foyen Bello. Have you heard of her yet?
No. Can you introduce me?
So she and I actually have never spoken directly. So we kind of flow in the same groups. But she's doing some great work with PowerApps in Nigeria with Sterling Bank and building the community. So I would say Foyen.
I love it. If you could do an intro on LinkedIn, that would be fantastic.
Okay, will do.
It's been great to have you on the show, Lauren. If people want to connect with you online, what social media channels should they follow you on?
You could follow me on Twitter. So LTaylorEDU is my Twitter handle. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Hey, thanks again for listening to the Power Platform Show. Full show notes for this episode are at nz365guy.com/214. I'm your host, Business Applications MVP, Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If you want to get somebody in particular that you want to see on the show, please reach out to me. LinkedIn Messenger is the best way to get hold of me. Make a suggestion, and we'll see what we can do to get them on here. Thanks again for spending your time with me today. Bye for now.